Okay, well, let's get started. So, my name's Jo Edwards. I'm managing director here at J Consulting. We're hosting the webinar here today. I was about to say website then, webinar here today, and this is all about family law marketing strategies. So, before we get into any detail at all, I just want to introduce you to our speakers today. So, I'm joined by James Evans, who's head of UK professional training at Our Family Wizard. Morning to you, James. Thanks very
Morning.
much for taking the time to join us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I'm also joined by, and delighted to be joined by Alison Green, who's partner and head of family at London-based Mackrell.Solicitors. Mackrell's are and Alison are joint clients of both JE Consulting and Our Family Wizard. So I'm hoping Alison can bring some really good kind of boots on the ground insight here. So welcome, Alison. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Jo. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem. Right. So to put the content of the webinar into a little bit of context today, I understand that for any marketer working in family law services, there are basically two types of marketing strategies, which ideally should work in parallel, complementing each other. The first aspect of that is all about brand awareness. And your brand awareness strategy is there to convey your brand message, provide all the basic information about your firm, which helps to generate word of mouth referrals, repeat business, and engagement with those who can really influence a client's buying decision. And brand awareness can go through lots and lots of different channels in your marketing mix. But essentially, it should be there to say who you are, about your firm, what you do, the services you provide, and who you do it for, your clients. And those are your impactful proof statements. So the second aspect of this is all about lead generation. And I'm going to come on to that a little bit later because I'd like to go into that lead gen in a bit more detail. But this image that you can see on the screen now, I hope kind of conceptualizes what we call the marketing funnel, which puts that brand awareness strategy and that lead gen strategy into a little bit more perspective. So this is a model really of how your family law marketing and business development should really work together. The funnel provides a framework upon which certainly all of our marketing strategies that we put together for clients is conceptualized and designed. So it's sometimes referred to as the marketing pipeline, and it recognizes that you must attract, nurture, and convert those who engage with your firm, with you, and with your content, and hopefully gets them through the funnel from this kind of position to being aware of who you are to actually wanting to engage your services. The bottom end of the funnel is all about lead generation. And as the name implies, this function of marketing is meant to generate, nurture new business through the end of that funnel where they become paying clients. Sometimes clients don't make it to the end of that funnel and don't become clients. They can be aware of you, they can consider you, they could go elsewhere, or their problem changes and they end up not engaging you, and they go back into the top of that funnel again. But all of your marketing should be keeping those captured leads, if you like, engaged. So we'll talk later in more detail about how the lead gen's achieved through digital strategies. I'm going to talk about digital marketing. James obviously going to talk about app technology. But before I do that, I just wanted to bring in Alison at this point, really. And we're not going to talk about anything digital at this stage, Alison, because I know that your team, as well as digital, put a lot of time into face-to-face meetings, into generating really good referral contacts, into keeping very close to your clients. So could you perhaps share with us what you do around repeat work and client recommendations, and also how you keep really close to your professional contacts?
Yeah, I think family law is quite interesting because obviously, unless and until you get to a certain age, which I'm probably at, you don't really get much repeat work because it's quite rare for someone to go through a divorce more than once. I've got a couple of clients who have, but that's a rarity. So basically, it's a one-off situation, and what you need to try and do is make sure you provide the best service for the client so that they then share their experience with their friends or their contacts or whatever. And then that's then gives you hopefully future lead generation. So, we're very conscious that you're as good as your last job. If you do a great job, then hopefully that means there'll be further work coming in. If you don't do a great job and someone's not very happy with what you do for whatever reason, then that's going to affect where things go from there. So we do stay in contact with clients when their work comes to an end. We always meet with them at the end of their case and have a bit more of a social interaction with them. And fairly frequently follow up anyway. We have a policy that we note their birthdays, their children's birthdays, major events, and during the course of the case, we would never send them anything which is going to make them unhappy on any of those special days. But after the case, we would follow up and, just stay in contact, find out how things are. And so we've got a lot of clients that we've got long relationships with, even though they've moved on from the difficult times in their lives and, they're in a happier place. I think generally in terms of professional contacts, again, we reach out, we have coffee, we have lunches, we interact with them when we go to various events, whether they're chambers events or other professional events. And just generally staying in contact with people. I think building the personal side of the professional relationship is really important, and I think people like that. I think if you remember that someone's been somewhere on holiday, or their kids were getting their exam results or whatever it might be, that makes a difference to the relationship that you have with someone.
And I know you unusually get involved in what I'd call peer-to-peer marketing. So you're actually networking with other lawyers and in legal circles. What benefits does that bring to you?
I think in terms of reputation, it puts you amongst the right people in your peer group and in the area of law in which you practice. But also, we're very lucky in that we benefit from conflict work that other lawyers might have. There are some barristers who do direct access work, and fairly frequently they'll get instructed on something on a direct access basis where they feel they can't do it without the use of a solicitor. And so they'll then contact us and see if we can step in. So, but also, in terms of just knowledge generally, sometimes things crop up and you think, oh, that would be quite interesting to know what other people think about that. And if you've got close relationships with other family lawyers, you can reach out to them and say, what do you think about this? And have a bit of a brainstorming about it. So yeah, having a really good close relationship, I think, with other people in the field is really important.
Okay, thanks very much, Alison. Now you mentioned positive client experience there, keeping close to clients when the matter's actually concluded. And I know positive client experience is fundamental to the work that you do. I also know, obviously, that you use Our Family Wizard as part of that. So can I just ask James to kind of come in here, talk about Our Family Wizard, what it is, how it works, and then perhaps we'll come back to Alison afterwards and just have a chat about how you're using that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think I echo absolutely what Alison says, that family law is a very unique community, and it's very productive in the sense of there are lots of events and networking occasions going on, and people know each other personally, professionally, and that's where those cross references come and are very productive. And so that's how we at Our Family Wizard have built our network. Essentially, there are the events that we attend, the drinks, the event, the parties, that kind of thing, where we get to know people and remind them of who we are, but also they know that if there's a query about Our Family Wizard that they're using in their case, they know where to find us. And we don't want anyone left in the dark about, Our Family Wizard is being used by my client, or the judge has ordered it, what does it do? That's where we want to be. So they know that, oh, I saw James at that drinks event the other week. I'll give him a quick call. And that's just sort of constant reminders that we are here. We're here to help. And that's how we sort of market ourselves in that capacity. What I'll do is I'll share my screen if that's okay, Joan. I'll give everyone a very quick sort of once over of our Family Wizard, and we'll put it into the context of how it works in terms of our marketing afterwards. But for those who don't know, we're a co-parenting app, so a space for families to communicate through before, during, or after a divorce or separation. We work very closely with the family courts in this country, and one of the main issues that we are noticing today, on top of the usual, parents are struggling with their communication, is that it's very easy to manipulate online communication. We're actually getting a lot of reports that families are using websites to falsify communication records. I'm actually going to show you what that looks like. This is now becoming such commonplace in our work that we really want to raise awareness of it. There are examples like you're seeing on screen where they go on a website like this one. It's called an iFake, and you can actually generate a fake communication record. You put in the name of the person in your contact book, and you draft out a message that you will have received from this person. This is a message that I'm sure Alison and a lot of other family lawyers are used to seeing with their clients. But it's very hard to know now if that message was actually real, because once you've drafted that message on the site, you can then personalize how it looks on your phone. So battery percentage, signal strength, network, Bluetooth, airplane mode, that type of thing. That's generated on these websites, and then they send it to you on your phone, and they make it look like it's come from someone in your contact book. It's really scary stuff, but it's really important that we at Our Family Wizard are letting family lawyers know that this is happening. We're getting reports from the courts that parents are submitting fake evidence, and it's important to know how Our Family Wizard safeguards against that. We go a step further and we talk about WhatsApp, because we know that WhatsApp is the main method of communication for separating parties. So there are tricks and different techniques that parents use using WhatsApp to actually mislead or create false information. What we're seeing on screen is maybe a typical argument you might see between separated parents, but one parent has written out a really horrible, nasty message. We're going to now show you how on WhatsApp you can actually send that message, wait for them to read it, but then edit the message and reword it into something completely different without WhatsApp recording the original content of the message. We are seeing this now all the time in family law. Parents are sending false information or manipulating their records to gain some sort of advantage in their communication records and then submitting it as evidence. It's really scary stuff, but it's important to know. And we are seeing screenshots everywhere, communication records through screenshots. But we are here to tell you, you cannot trust a screenshot. There are websites like this one where you can create fake screenshots of communication records. So that is what our system was built to safeguard against. We asked people in a research project last year how often they rely on communication records. 90% of the few thousand practitioners we asked said that they were regularly relying on communication records. They were aware that online communication could be manipulated. That's relatively good knowledge. But have you come across falsified record in your work? And the research is showing that more and more practitioners are coming across falsified records in their work. And that's why they will use Our Family Wizard to safeguard against online communication. Our platform has got all of these features that have been built specifically for the needs of separating parents. They can call each other in our app without the use of phone numbers and email addresses. They can share calendars. They can message each other with all of this being timestamped and recorded. They can track expenses. We've even got AI technology called Tone Meter that will actually guide them on their language if they're writing something that might cause some sort of harm or offense. They can store information, upload pictures, videos, and locations in a journal, and family law professionals can have access to. They can have access to turn this into court admissible reports. Each of our features has a function to turn this into a bundle. So if you are sifting through all your emails, that's something, Alison, I'm sure you're very busy with, constantly reading through the screenshots of messages and emails. This will streamline that process for everyone involved, as well as being able to see the sign-in history. Our Family Wizard is a paid service, but we do offer a free version for families on low income. But there are free apps on the market, but they are unfortunately not GDPR compliant or are not accepted by the courts. As the comment at the bottom states, the free apps cause more problems than they solve. If they cannot afford Our Family Wizard, but they need a co-parenting app, we still want them to use Our Family Wizard. We have a fee waiver process where parents can get free accounts either through self-application or through discretionary application from practitioners or the courts. If they need to pre-agree on how they're going to communicate through our Family Wizard, they can do that through a parenting plan that we have developed with the National Association of Children Contact Centres. That's fully available for free online. And we also have our template order language. This has been written for us by the courts, by the judiciary, and we are court ordered every day across England and Wales. The courts will stipulate to how frequently they will, how quickly they'll sign up to our Family Wizard, and then what elements of their communication they'll use in our system. They can get specific on the features if they need to call each other on certain dates at times, pre-agree to the calendar usage, limit the messaging, or put a practitioner in there. This order will be used in those capacities. And that's where I come in. If people need me, that's where I help. That's actually a picture of little 6-year-old me, because what we want at our Family Wizard is happy, smiley children. You know, my role in the company is to educate professionals, and that is essentially how we do our marketing. You know, if a practitioner like Alison says, you know, I've got our Family Wizard in a case, or even if it's the case that they've never heard of us, that's what we're here to do. Educate them, train on how our system works, so the next time it comes up in a case, practitioners feel more confident in referring their clients, or they know how to help with certain problems. Um, that's a very quick whistle stop tour, and I've left my contact details on screen if people did want to find out more. But Alison, I know you've used this with a few of your clients
Mhm.
before, and hopefully it's something that you've seen be beneficial to those
Yeah,
clients.
yeah, definitely. Because it does, because of the communication and the way it's done, it takes the heat out of people speaking to one another. And also, I think they're a little bit more careful knowing that the communications are being recorded. I think it's also maybe important to add for anybody that does international work, it can be used across international boundaries in English-speaking locations. So one of James's colleagues was very kind and did a presentation to my international family group from Mackrell International a couple of months ago. And, you know, they were quite interested about how it could be used in other countries overseas. So again, particularly if you've got parents in different countries, then, you know, that can work really, really well.
Yeah,
So
we're very, very fortunate to have offices in all 50 states of America, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. So indeed, English-speaking countries. We are working on more languages, but they can change their keyboard in the app to make it universal. But I agree, Alison. I think the word we use a lot in our Family Wizard is accountability. It makes the parents accountable for the choices they're making with their communication, particularly with language and sort of co-parenting choices, as it were. So no, that's really good to hear. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much, James. So let's kind of move on a step from there, and we'll talk now more about digital marketing in a bit more detail. James, I know, has got a great marketing head, yeah, as has Alison. So as I'm talking through, if you feel the need to chip in, please do, yeah. And likewise, if you're watching the webinar live, if you use the Q&A tool on your Zoom toolbar, drop any questions in as we go along, and one of us will aim to answer them as we go through. I've got the Q&A box open so I can see anything coming in. So let's just move on to talking about content marketing and lead gen through digital strategy. Just again, to put things into a little bit of context here, around 70% of legal firms now are already generating leads online. And that when I'm talking to you this morning, I'm talking about family law here. So almost half of those firms who took part in a recent study have redesigned their website and restructured their content strategy within the past year. And that was an interesting statistic for me, because it used to be the case that, you know, your website would go live, we'd come back to it maybe 8 years later. Yeah, that just doesn't cut it anymore. It's a moving feast, constantly changing, constantly being restructured, refreshing, you know, designs and messaging. And the survey that we looked at also showed that 66% of those firms plan to increase online spending, which again is another interesting statistic for me, because that's an increase on last year of 2023 versus 2024 of an impressive 56%. So I think what the survey was trying to highlight is that those firms that put time, effort, budget into generating leads online are likely to grow 4 times faster than those who don't. And whilst those look great numbers, I think the thing to be mindful of is the work and effort that has to go into this. And I'll come back to Alison a little bit later on, who will no doubt back me up that a lot of time and effort does have to go into this. But content online that is capable of consistently generating, nurturing new business leads does work. And that can be things like blogs. It could be the creation of a content library. It could be some resource sections that offer free content, strong landing pages on your website, and well thought out call to actions on anything that you put out online. So make it easy for your potential client to get in touch with you. We've got firms that are using WhatsApp to do that now. We've got firms that will engage via Teams or Calendly to book things online and have an open calendar. So, you know, it's massively changed the landscape in how those call to actions come together. So what we'll look at now is specific steps that you can take to plan your own digital content strategy. We'll have a quick talk around search engine optimization and how that and social media fit into that online equation. And we'll come back to this important call to action. So a content strategy will ideally specify what type of content will be useful to your target clients at various stages of that buying process. So if you remember the funnel we looked at, you know, consider us to be aware of us, to consider us, to use us, requires different types of content. So in the early stages of engagement, that content really needs to be optimized for search engine optimization. You know, whilst you'll see lots of people talking about TikTok being the new search engine or YouTube being the new search engine, Google is still the big daddy out there and drives the majority of organic searches for family law services. I'm not saying ignore the social media channels at all, but I'm saying focus, effort, budget still should remain with Google as your primary organic source of inquiries. As the nurturing cycle progresses with that individual that's aware of you, you need to have greater involvement and interaction to build the trust to get them through that funnel. And a content strategy really helps to address the changing needs of that buying process and defines what you need to do at each stage. So where to begin? I think I would always begin with a SWOT analysis of your existing digital footprint. You know, what does your team do well? You know, is there a type of content that your audience likes to engage with? Is there a tactic, skill, or campaign that you've done previously that's had paid off, you know, had some really good results? And when you do that initial analysis, what you start to build up is this type of quadrant. I'll just put an example up here, where you can really identify, you know, what you do well. Are there opportunities in the market that you could potentially capitalize on? And that could be, you know, weak competition locally. It could be there's going to be a big change in legislation or a change in legislation, which will, you know, drive things differently and drive content requirements differently. It could be that you want to capitalize on a particular type of client. You know, is it, you know, the high net worth individual with a big pension? Is it more high street? Is it children matters? So the type of content helps you to kind of define your audience and have a look at where those opportunities lie, and also be very honest about where your weaknesses might lie. It could be, certainly in my experience, we were not doing anything. We'll start from a blank sheet of paper. But it could be that we've done stuff in the past, it hasn't been particularly engaging, and we need to look at, you know, why that might be. Or we don't have, you know, a strong positioning on page one of Google, or, you know, our competition are all doing TikTok and we're not doing it, and we're never going to do video. How do we get around that? So there could be all sorts of things really that you bring into that SWOT analysis. The key thing though is that when you've done it, you've got to be able to be A, honest, but B, take the things that you've put into that SWOT analysis into ways that you can, you know, really act on the strengths, grab the opportunities, and deal and mitigate with the weaknesses and the threats. And I'm a great believer in, you know, what you can measure, you can manage. So, you know, content is the fourth row bridge. It's constantly changing. You've constantly got to add to it. Have internal meetings to discuss trends, learn lessons from others. Set some KPIs to measure performance, and that could be, you know, we'd ideally like a piece of content to have, you know, X number of engagement or X numbers of shares or X number of likes, or to have driven X number of inquiries. There's all sorts of KPIs that you can set around your content. So put some measurable KPIs against the work that you're doing. Otherwise, you fall into the trap of creating lots of noise that nobody's listening to. Okay. So client personas, I touched on know your audience earlier and defining, your ideal client. Again, when you're developing digital content and digital strategies, understanding your audience is absolutely vital. When you go out with a plan that says, well, we're all things to all men here, that it's not going to work. It's too scattergun. And those firms that really understand their clients and listen to what their clients want are the ones that will succeed in terms of the content that they're producing. So have a think about who your ideal client is. Your firm will likely serve different groups with various goals, various challenges, different preferences. You could take a bit more of a hands-on approach and actually fill out something called a client persona template. So, or a buyer persona template, as it's generally called. There's an example on the screen at the moment, but how do you define this? Well, your firm will have your niches, will have your ideal client preferences, but I also recommend that you talk to your clients about their experience they've had with you, what they wanted from their family lawyer, how they found you, how they found their family, and all of that will help build that buyer template out. So we will share this recording afterwards. So if you want a copy of that persona template, then we'll provide that with the recording, and please feel free to use that example.
I'll just add to that, Joe. I think one of the things that's been so productive for us over the years is really engaging with feedback. If practitioners say to us, this works, but you need to, in order for it to evolve and better, it needs to do this. We have to listen to, as you said, the trends and keep a finger on the pulse, because if our product isn't delivering what it needs to, then it's not going to be used. So constant loops of communication and feedback with our clients is so, so important. So I absolutely echo what you've just said there. It's really valuable.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. I think, your client is the ideal proof statement and giver of the information that you need. I don't know if you agree with that, Alison.
No, I definitely do agree.
Yeah.
Because, otherwise, as I said earlier, you're as good as the last good job that you did. And if you didn't do a great job, then that's not helpful. So
Yeah.
you want clients to share what they're happy with in what you're doing.
I think the other thing that the client feedback can deliver as well is preferred communication preferences as well. I mentioned WhatsApp earlier, and by taking feedback from clients, you start to see trends emerging in the way that particularly age demographics want to communicate with you. There's so many firms that have been resistant to WhatsApp for business or WhatsApp generally, and there are lost opportunities there by not making different channels available to your different types of client, and bearing in mind that age demographics play a big part in how they want to communicate with you. Yeah. And I saw recently a firm lost a potential client because they refused to work on WhatsApp.
Wow.
So yeah, interesting.
I think it is quite interesting, particularly with overseas clients as well. WhatsApp is very widely used, but it also gives you pretty much a direct access to the client, which you don't get with email in the same way, because people will log off from their emails and that will be that. But if something urgent crops up and you need to contact them, WhatsApp gets straight to the heart of the matter. So I think it's a great way to keep in contact with clients.
I know I talked about WhatsApp earlier in a different context, and I'm not anti WhatsApp, but I completely agree with you, Joe, that you need to have that communication with that individual, find out for them what's going to be the most productive process of communication. And if it is WhatsApp, then you adapt it to using WhatsApp, or if it's email or phone calling or whatever it is, you ensure that whatever method of communication for them they need is useful. You know, especially with so many people that we work with now who are neurodiverse and learn in different ways. It's so important that we are adapting and adjusting to their communication needs to accommodate for that. So there's loads of different options, and I agree. Sometimes WhatsApp is absolutely the easiest and best way to do it.
Okay, so with that in mind, yeah, setting some objectives and KPIs in all of this effort that you're going to kind of put into your digital lead generating thing. So every content team has a goal, but it's not necessarily the same one. So you've got to think about what success means to you and your firm. And then you can compare and measure the decisions that you've made. And some of the most common ways that we see to measure the success of digital marketing, it could be email engagement, for example. So if you send out, a regular newsletter, or you've done an e-marketing campaign, again, quite difficult in family law to run lead gen email marketing campaigns. But if you're putting stuff out there, which is to keep in touch with clients, because you want more referrals, or you're putting stuff out there to keep in touch with professional contacts, email engagement, we generally measure by, how many people have opened it, how many people have clicked through to the website as a result of that. Are we growing the list? And if not, why not? And if we've had a lead magnet, which might be, we've produced a guide, for example, on no fault divorce, what it means. We want to look at how many people have actually downloaded it. So there are measurable kind of benchmarks there. Website's a little bit easier because Google Analytics will give you, what pages are your visitors looking at, where are you featuring on page one, what's the bounce rate like, are people spending enough time on the page? So I'd set some website kind of measurables to make sure that whatever you're driving through whatever channel is creating that engagement. Social media, again, a bit easier, measure by shares, likes, follows, and ultimately, which is always the discussion with the managing partner, how many new clients have we had from this? So what is the conversion rate? How many of those people in that funnel are actually converted into paid work? And where is the source of that work? Has it come from a Google search? Has it come from a pay-per-click campaign? Has it come from a professional referrer? Is it a client? All of that has to be measured. And it's a really important part of your lead gen plan. In terms of content plan, we tend to map it out as a calendar. So we look at what's happening in the year. It could be that we know there's new legislation coming through, in October, for example, and we want to schedule a campaign around that. So we're mapping that out for October. If we've got a bit of a thin month, we might look at some of the awareness days that happen. It could be there's an International Family Day, or I think there's actually an International Divorce Day now at some point in the calendar. So, you might want to put some content out around that, or and some of it doesn't have to be really, doesn't have to be necessarily be serious all the time. You might want to have a bit of fun with some of that content as well. Bear in mind that whatever you've mapped out on your content strategy and the type of media that you're using, whether it's written content or animation or video, all of this content needs really to have a home on your website. And the reason for that is that it will all help with your organic search engine optimization. So Google relies on refreshed content. Yeah. So the more content you're delivering through your digital lead gen strategy will help that SEO process. It just needs to be put on the website in a well optimized way. We often create a section on a website called insights or resources or library. So there's lots of different names you can kind of use for that place on your website, but it's the place where that growing portfolio of content can be organized. It can be found easily by visitors. It's good leads back to call to actions that you put on any of your emails or social media posts. I mentioned blogs earlier, and I do get questioned a lot, do blogs still have a place? Isn't it all about video now? Well, blogs can be videos, but no, it isn't all just about videos. Good written thought leadership content is probably the easiest and best way to add fresh, valuable content onto your website that Google will like. Yeah. So I would always recommend that you're doing ideally a new blog every week. It's done in a very thought leadership way. It's written as not in legal jargon, yeah, unless you're writing for other lawyers. You want to make sure that you've got a view, a voice, and comment on what's happening in the news, what's a topic of interest. And you can also link to things which, again, marketing jargon, lead magnets. These can be, downloadable guides. It could be a white paper that's out and you're making a comment on that. It could be a research study. So you don't have to generate, your own topic all of the time. It could be that there's something come out, you want to create a link to it, you want to have a voice and an opinion on it, and that's just good thought leadership content. Alison, just on that point, I know you're a fan of thought leadership content, and we spend a lot of time working with you on developing thought leadership pieces. What's the impact that you've seen from that on both the firm and, I guess, your own personal brand as well?
I think actually there's a really good example in that I had an email earlier this week in relation to something we'd put out about child maintenance from somebody who had obviously read it somewhere, and he basically said, I've seen this, and he sent me the link and said, can I have your thoughts on this point? So that's a prime example as to how that can help. I think, what we tend to do is we make sure the blogs go out from all of the fee earners within the team,
Yeah.
so that everybody is raising their own brand. Because, as you said earlier, it's not just about the firm brand, it's about you as an individual lawyer. And we've all got different skills and different things that clients might like about us. So it's a good hook into picking up clients who either have that problem or see you as a person and think, oh, that's quite an interesting read. So I think blogs continue to be important, particularly for the technical side of things. And if you've got a view on something which is technical, then there's no reason not to share that.
I also think it's incredibly valuable to collaborate as much as possible with the thought leadership content. We could all go off and write excellent articles every week, but to contribute other voices of people that we're working with in the same space. And again, what you said earlier, Joe, picking up on trends and running with that for a regular process on blogs and videos is we've seen that being really productive.
Mm.
I'm curious to know your thoughts, Joe, on how things like online excuse me, online blogs and articles, how the nature of those being written and delivered will change as more people use AI for their writing.
Mm.
If you see that having an interesting dynamic with this particular element of marketing.
That's a really good question, James. And yeah, yeah, it's chat when you look at AI, Chat GPT for generating blog content, then it's got its place, and it will inevitably change the landscape of how thought leadership content is delivered and produced. I don't think anybody who says differently to that is actually being honest about it. Yeah.
That's
What I would say is that when people choose a trusted professional advisor, and I'm going to use the word trusted there, they want to trust them.
mm,
Yeah. And I don't think Chat GPT will ever get over the personal brand of that individual in the way that you would want it to. So my advice is, fine, use Chat GPT to kind of give you the bones of something by all means, but you've got to put your own spin on it. You've got to put your own commentary to it, because otherwise it will come across as fake, because it
yeah.
won't be your voice.
Mm,
Now, as time evolves, we're already seeing, blog avatars delivering video content. You would never know that it's not that individual delivering that blog content. And
mm.
that's got its place. And you can have fun with that in marketing to deliver things in lots of different ways. But always be really careful about that word trust,
Mm.
because for anybody reading stuff now, that there are obvious markers that show it's AI generated content.
And I suppose
Yeah.
that's only ever going to pick up on what's already out there online. But as Alison said earlier, so many of these blogs and articles are being delivered off the back of conversations that we're having at conferences and at the bar and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
AI wasn't listening to that conversation as far as we're aware yet. So that's always going to be unique, I suppose.
It probably is listening. Yeah. So I discovered, in fact, I discovered yesterday. So we all know, we've all got the stories of you having a chat with somebody when you've got your phone next to you, having
Yeah.
a chat with, you're talking about, have you tried this latest restaurant? Suddenly the ads for that restaurant or similar restaurants start popping up on your phone. So apps that are tracking passive listening are there. And unless you remember to turn off passive listening on every app that you download, your phone is listening to what you've got to say. And it's
Yeah.
an interesting marketing concept now about how that works.
Yeah, it's also to do with your location services. So if the three of us were in a room together and we were all talking about a restaurant and two out of the three of us Googled that restaurant later, the third person, the phone thinks, well, they were with them when they were Googling that. They were probably interested in that restaurant as well. We'll take a chance and throw you that advert. So
Yeah,
it's extraordinary what it's able to do now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll see. But a great concept. But I just say that I approach AI generated content with caution. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think also there's another thing to be mindful of, and again, this came out of a meeting with a client recently, which is quite a lot of what is put out there, particularly on TikTok and the like, isn't necessarily 100% true and accurate. So, if someone's picking up on that, you have to be really careful. James, as you said earlier, in relation to the WhatsApp and the way people amend that, in the same way, we have clients contact us and say, oh, I've read this or seen this on TikTok or whatever it might be, and it's not actually correct. And it starts then to set up a situation where, well, who do they believe? Do they believe what they've seen on social media or what we're saying to them? So the delivery of that message can be quite tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a question here actually from one of our audience to what extent does generative engine optimization impact search engine effectiveness? Again, really good question. When you've generated AI content and you add it to your website, you can add it to your website and optimize it for search engine optimization, and it will still work. But again, I'm put big red flag here. Google recognizes markers on AI generated content and dismisses it. So you've got to not rewrite the whole thing, but unless you put your own commentary into it and your own voice into it, Google will likely pick up those AI markers as well. So again, don't put all of your eggs in one basket thinking ChatGPT will do everything I need it to do for search engine optimization. It won't. Yeah, but it helps. I'm not going to deny that at all. And particularly when you're looking for an inspirational headline,
Yeah.
ChatGPT comes up with some really clever stuff. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about search engine optimization. Just a pointer here, SEO is a subject I can talk about for another hour. I'm not going to, but remember everything that you're putting out there, optimize it for your website, optimize it for Google. So look at the tools and techniques that you need to do that. We mentioned social media earlier, and why grabbing attention on social media matters. Well, it does matter, and that's because a lot of people, the majority of people now get their information from social media platforms, whatever that might be, and one size doesn't fit all. You've got to look at where, your audience demographic best fits with the social media platform that you engage on. Don't think just because everybody's talking about TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever that you've got to be on every single channel generating content. Look at the channels where your content is going to have the greatest effect. Yeah. And be mindful that people's attention spans are now less than a goldfish, which is 8 seconds. Yeah. And you've got to get your message out there quickly. I thought this might be interesting to you. So just looking at what the average engagement rates are. This is relevant to family law services here. So these are average engagement rates on Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. And then we had a look at how we compare. So we went right across our client base and just had a look at the engagement rates in terms of the content that we're putting out on social media. Now, for those of you watching thinking, well, it's blowing your own trumpet a bit, it is. But the point I wanted to make is the majority of the content we're putting out there is quality thought leadership content. And that's the bit that makes the difference on engagement. So just bear that in mind, that when you're putting your content strategy together. So I can see we're up to our 45 minutes. I think my closing thoughts really come back to, your content strategy needs to be thought out. It needs to have good KPIs. You need to be able to measure it. You've got to think about how you're going to produce it, deliver it, distribute it, and how you're going to measure those key trends that we've talked about. Alison, I don't know if you want to put any closing thoughts in on family law marketing generally, or the impact of thought leadership content.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to think about the brand of the organization you work for, and then your individual brands, because as we all know, commonly used phrase, people buy into people. So if they like you as a person, they like what they see that you put out there, they're more likely to come to you. So I think it's a sort of a two-stage process, or double level. You need to think about both. And in terms of the information that you put out there, anything that's relevant, which is current, pick up on what's going on in the newspapers or even on the television. If there are things that are going on in dramas and that sort of thing, pick up on those and make comments about them. Because again, people like to see that you're tuned into what's going on a day-to-day basis, rather than being very high level, and talking about the big technical things.
Mm.
Thank you. No, really appreciate that, Alison. I've got a question here actually, and I'd be interested in your view on this as well, James. Thoughts on pay-per-click advertising. So I know from our point of view, for family law services, we will always look at Google pay-per-click advertising, and we will always look at social media advertising, whether that's on Facebook or LinkedIn or Insta. But again, it comes back to that persona template. Is our audience likely to be using Google, and is our audience likely to be using social media platforms to search for information and advice? And some of that can also depend on location. So that's our view. We'll throw it into the mix, but it has to meet the buyer template. I don't know if you have thoughts about
Yeah,
that as well.
well, I agree, and I think it's important to note what you said earlier regarding consistency with your tone and your brand. If you are opting in to do a pay-per-click advertisement, then you need to ensure that you have, I suppose, control over what that looks like as well as what it is. It certainly has its place, though. I mean, if there's an opportunity for you to get your logo and your brand in a completely new space that you otherwise wouldn't have access to, then that's probably a really, useful use of your budget in that sense. But I think it's quite nuanced. You have to look at that audience. Are you going to find them in another capacity? Do you think you're already reaching those people? And then you have to sort of make a judgment call on whether it's worth it. But indeed, if there is a suitable time and space for it, and you think it's consistent, then it can be really, really productive way of doing things. Yeah.
Okay.
I think also, just to add to that, the follow-up on an inquiry, excuse me, on the back of a pay-per-click is really important.
Mm.
As soon as somebody engages with you, you need to follow up quickly. If you leave it 2 or 3 days down the line, you would have lost it.
Absolutely.
So, as soon as it comes in, deal with it, make contact. We have a free half an hour consultation with people. And that actually, again, is quite a useful tool, because
Mm.
with a pay-per-click, you can have that conversation, see whether or not you can help. If it's not you, you might be able to refer them on to somebody who could help. Or, if they need help in terms of communication for child matters, then, we'd refer to someone like James. So,
Mm.
yeah, you need to respond to those things quite quickly.
And I'd say if you are engaging with pay-per-view advertisement, then I would say that it's encourage you to try and ensure that you're going to get some metrics from that company who are you're paying for your advertisement, because you might not necessarily get that lead generated directly through, oh, I saw your advert on this website, but they might be able to provide you with information like, you got 20,000 clicks in the West Midlands on this one advert on this one day. And that's probably really helpful information when you go back and review,
Yeah.
New interactions in that area, and
Yeah.
you can associate it more indirectly, I suppose. So
Yeah.
always encouraged to ask for that.
Okay, well, thank you. And I appreciate we've overrun this morning. So if there were any outstanding questions, I will pick them up on my report afterwards and drop those individuals a response to those. Thank you for the questions coming in. Thank you to Alison for joining us. I appreciate your time's really valuable, Alison. So thank you very much for being able to join
Pleasure,
me
Jane.
today. And thank you, James, as well. Again, appreciate your contribution. If you do want to get in touch with myself or James to follow up today, please feel free to do so. Our email details are on the screen in front of you now. Just give you a moment to look at those. And we will be in touch with everybody by email with a recording of this webinar in the next sort of 24 hours. So if you need to recap on anything we've said, then please do. Thank you for everybody who's joined us today.